What's up, guys? Welcome back to the channel. So today's video we're going to be going over some repairs on my E46 station wagon. I'm sure if you guys have watched my videos, you've seen this before. I'm sure quite a few of you guys own E46s, whether it be coupe, sedan, station wagon, convertible, you know, any of the body styles. I have a post facelift car, so it's a 03. These are the cornering lights that swoop up instead of the ones that swoop down. My headlights don't have the double dips underneath those. They have the single dip and then the smoother curve. Just if you are somewhat familiar, you'll understand pre-facelift. This is a post-facelift car. Since I bought the car a couple years ago, I've had the stock bumper on this. This is pretty much the run-of-the-mill stock bumper that's on every E46 that's not a sport package or a ZHP or an M3. We are going to be going through, I'm going to show you guys how to install a ZHP bumper. This is actually a knockoff. I'm pretty sure it's a knockoff. It was actually on my green parts car. If you guys have seen it in my previous videos, I showed that car. I took it off of that car, went and got it, took all the trim and stuff off of it, went and got it painted. So I'm going to show you guys how to do this as if you were doing the same thing, you know, from starting fresh. There's a bunch of companies that sell kits of this bumper where you buy it unpainted. It comes with the fog lights, the trim for the fog lights, the grill, the trims that go across here, and then you get it painted, you put it together, you put it on your car. I'm going to go through this process as if you guys were doing that. So I'm going to start from just a freshly painted bumper. I'm going to show you guys how to put all the trim pieces in, and I'm going to show you guys how to take the old bumper off and put the new bumper on. Now, there's two different ways that you can take this off. Underneath these trim clips on this bumper, or underneath these trim pieces, actually, the black pieces, there's a bunch of push tabs that actually hold the bumper itself physically to the metal bumper that's underneath this. And then in each corner, there are two studs that are slotted into the bumper that go through the metal bumper and have a 10mm nut holding it on the back. Now, you guys might have an instance where yours has been apart before and somebody's not put those 10mm nuts back on. If your car's never been taken apart before, those 10mm nuts, I don't think are accessible from behind. If they are, I'm going to take it apart anyways and show you guys where it's at. I'm going to take it apart and take the whole metal bumper off of the car and then show you guys how to take the plastic trim off of that metal bumper and show you guys where those screws and all the attachment points are. So I'm going to start with getting this bumper off so I can show you guys how that comes apart, and then we're going to swap all of the stuff that needs to be swapped over from this bumper over to that bumper, and then I'll show you guys how to put that bumper back on this car. So let's get to it. All right, so to get started, taking this off, it's pretty straightforward. Normally, mine's actually broken. I'm pretty sure there's normally a 8mm screw in this bumper that holds this in the corner. I could be wrong, but I'm pretty sure there's normally an 8mm screw in that corner. Mine are broken, so we're not going to have to worry about that with mine. Other than that, you're going to take your screws along the bottom off, which actually none of mine are attached either down there. Clips or anything like that. I don't believe, I do. 8mm screw here on this side, and there's another 8mm screw over here on this side holding the bumper to the inner fender liner. So you're going to take those 2/8 out, and then these grills on the outside of yours have to come out. They actually come out really easily. You're going to just pull on them. They have little locking tabs on them that hold them in place. They pull out pretty easily. And then up underneath here, you see this slot right here in the bumper on this side, and there's then another one on this side. In that hole, this car actually, these bumpers actually have it too, these holes here. There is a bolt up there, and the bolt is a E14, and you are going to take that E14 out. I have a deep one. You don't need a deep one. You can use a deep one with a or a shallow one with a socket or extension on it. But what you're going to do is you're going to take that E14 out, and once you take that E14 out, the whole bumper, plastic bumper and metal bumper, are going to pull off the front of the car. Now, I don't have my fog lights because about 2 months ago, one of them caught a rock and broke. The factory fog lights on these cars are actually glass. interesting fact. But one of them caught a rock and broke, so I pulled the splash panel or the fender liners back on both sides and pulled them out just because I didn't want one broken and one still there. Just pulled them both out and left 2 empty holes there. So that's why I'm missing mine. You're going to have 2 plug connections for each of those. And then the horns are actually also mounted to the back of the metal frame, or the metal bumper itself. It's actually aluminum. So when you undo these 2 screws on either side, you're going to pull this metal, the whole bumper off with the metal bumper. And you're going to have to unplug the horns as you're taking it off. So I'm going to get these unbolted, and then I'm going to pull this bumper off, and I'm going to show you unplugging the horns and where the fog light plugs would be as well. All right, so bumper's off. Plug connection hitting this side for the horn and the fog light. Other side, plug connection for the horn and the fog light. Pretty straightforward. And then show you where those are on the back of everything. Driver side horn, passenger side horn. Plug connections are there and there. Pretty easy to see once you pull this bumper off. Fog lights are normally screwed in here. Plug connections into the bottom of them. These are the spots where those bolts come up through. And what they do is they actually go through the bumper and screw into the top side of the bumper here. There's actually that hole right there is threaded. So they just go through the bumper on either side. There's the one on that side. And then they actually go through these things here on the bumper. These crash supports, they go up through both of these. And then screw into the top half of the bumper. Pretty simple setup. Like I said, not a whole lot to take the bumper off. I took 2 screws and 2 bolts out, and I had the front bumper off of the car. So now we're gonna go into getting the stuff torn off of that bumper that we need, and then getting this bumper set up and put together so we can put it back on the car. So let's go start getting the stuff torn off of this one. All right, so we got our bumper. Obviously we got our bumper off. The 2 things that I want to point out to you that need to be part of the reason why I feel like this bumper needs, the metal bumper needs to be taken off in order to get the actual cover off, is there's a 10mm here and a 10mm there in the corner. Those are actually slotted into the bumper itself. It's a stud and it comes through this metal frame and is screwed in, obviously, with 2 10mm nuts in the corner. And then down here where my finger is here, you see it wiggling, and over here on this side where the fog light trim attaches, there's another one that actually, the fog light trim is supposed to slot under, and in mine, I don't know if it's because when mine got broken, they got popped out, I don't really know. But they're supposed to be underneath the fog light trim as well on both sides, and then screwed up and tightened up. And what that does is supports this lower half of the bumper to this metal frame. And then when you're going to take this apart and you're trying to get this metal frame out of here, you got to take all these 10s. So these 10s in the corner, the 10s here on these metal, or on these brackets for the fog lights. And then underneath here, this little bracket here for this lower part of this bumper, there's 2 push pins up this way. And then in each one of these holes that you see here, the smaller rounder holes, this one's actually a locating tab through here. They're going to be the same size or in the same orientation as the 10mm nuts in the corner. There's normally push pins that come from the other side of the bumper, which is why you have to take the black trim off the front of these bumpers in order to take this metal part out properly. So you're going to take the black trim on the front out, and the black trim on the front actually just pulls off as well. You get something underneath the edge of it. I can probably pull this off by hand because these have been out a couple times, but you're really just going to pull them out, and they pull out in one piece. So they have tabs along it that hold it into the bumper, and then once you do that, you'll get access to all these little push pins. And these are the push pins that I was talking about. So I don't have them in this bumper, but they were in the bumper on the green car. They'll be push pins like this. They'll be in from the other side, outside of the bumper, coming up like this, and pressed in, and they hold the bumper cover to the bumper itself. And then there'll be 2 here underneath as well. I believe, yeah, there's 2 more on the outside edges here as well. normally. Obviously mine doesn't have all of it. I know my car's been in an accident before, so I'm sure some of the stuff was taken off and never put back. So it's a good thing I have the clips from the other car because I'm gonna need them. So I'm gonna get this bumper cover or this metal bumper out of this bumper cover, and then I'm gonna show you putting this metal bumper in that bumper cover and then getting all the trim pieces put on so we can get that bumper put on the car. All right, so we got our metal bumper pulled out of our other bumper, and now we're gonna go back to putting it into our new bumper. So this is our new bumper cover, and then it just goes into the middle of it. No different than it came out of the other one. Gotta make sure it's in the right space in here, otherwise it's not gonna go in there. And what you're gonna be able to do, once you get it into the right way, is you'll see that all these holes here, they're in that space for the, where the push pins come through and the nuts come through are all gonna line up the way they're supposed to. So once you do that, you're gonna take your nuts, and I was actually incorrect. They're not slotted into the bumper on the other side. They're actually just like a flat washer, and they come in from the other side and just secure the bumper in place. In both corners. So you put these nuts on, and then once you get the nuts on, you're gonna do both corners, and then you're gonna do all your push pins in here through the middle from the other side, from the front of the car, as if you're looking at the bumper from the front. And then once you get the nuts tightened on the push pins all in from the other side, we're gonna move on to our next step, which is gonna be getting our trims in. Actually, we'll get our fog lights put in, and then we'll get our middle grille trim here put in as well. All right, so we got our bumper bolted in both corners, and then all our push clips all through here. And then don't forget, there's also 4 push clips that go underneath this lip here that secure the bottom half, or this like lower opening to the bottom half of the bumper. So once you do that, you're gonna flip it over, put all those push pins in, flip it back over to where we're at now, and then you're going to take, next thing I'm gonna do, and you can do this if you want, we can start with the middle grille. I'm gonna put my fog lights in. These are pretty straightforward. There's 2 locating tabs on the outside edge of them, so we're gonna be starting with the passenger side in this case. Those locating tabs go through into the bumper, like slots into the bumper, and then the fog light itself comes in, and in this part right here, see if you guys can see this right here, where my thumb is at here, there's a hole in the bumper itself, and there is a nut and washer that come with the fog light. And what you're going to do is you're going to line this up like this, lock it into its tab over here, line the bolt hole up, and put your bolt and then your nut back on, and then your fog light itself will be secured in place on that side. I'll tighten those up off screen. The next thing you're going to want to do is your lower grille. There's tabs here on this part inside the edge of this bumper. Lower grille goes in like that and locks over top of those tabs. It'll snap into place all the way around. That's in place. And once you've got that in place, we're going to flip the bumper over. We're going to put our front fog light trims in. On both sides, they're marked right and left. So this is the right side. And it just snaps into place like that. And the 2 lock, there's actually like locking tabs around the outside edges of it that lock into holes in the bumper, and then the other 2 lock in behind. Both of our fog lights are in. The only thing left to do is to put our trim pieces in. But the next thing that I'm going to do is we're going to go over to the car and we're going to work on getting this bumper put into the car and getting it mounted up in place. All right, so now that we're back over at the car, there's one more thing that you guys are going to have to do before we can put that bumper on, and is replace these brackets on the end here that the bumper itself actually slots into. So these brackets here are for the old bumper. There's a bracket that's molded into the bumper that slots over top of these brackets here. They're not big enough to fit the bracket that's on the back of that aftermarket bumper. There's actually updated or different, in general, just different brackets that you have to put in their place so that that bumper will slot into place properly. The part numbers I will put in the link down below. The part number for the driver side of the car is going to end in 295, and the part number for the passenger side of the car is going to end in 296. So I'm going to get these brackets mounted up on both sides. They are pretty relatively easy to get off. There's literally a singular 10mm screw in the back of the hole. Once you get that bracket out of the way, we'll get the new bracket put in its place. And it mounts the same way through the hole. Have to do a little bit of finagling with these to get them lined up, but 10mm on both sides. Take the brackets off, the factory brackets off, and put these aftermarket brackets on. So I'm going to get those mounted up on both sides, and we're going to get that bumper pulled over here and we're going to get started putting it on. Alright, so we got our bumper up in place. It's pretty much the exact opposite of removal. You're going to put your metal bumper down over top of those two little, like, I don't even know which one to call them, those little standoffs that are on the front of the bumper. They slots over it, but the only other thing I need to point out to you guys is on your factory stuff, there's a bracket that's mounted to the end of the fender here. It's got two push clips that hold it in place. They're almost like a push-in pin, but they don't have a head to them. They're just like a pin that goes in the middle and spreads everything out. What you do is you take like a pocket screwdriver or a punch or a pick or something like that and push that little wedge piece out of there, and then you can pry those little expanding clips. They're like these clips here as far as the way they expand, except they look like this actually, and they don't have an end on them. So I think they're actually like rivets, like they pull tight, and then once they pull tight it snaps the end off of them, but they'll look like this when you look up in there. You're going to push this middle piece all the way through out the other side, and it'll loosen this little expanding rivet part of it, and then you can pry that out of there. You pry that out of there, you pull those brackets out, because this bumper does not have the provisions on it for mounting to these brackets on the fenders, so you got to take both sides off. And then when you're going back together, your bumper is going to slot over top of, let's see if I can show you guys in here, over top of that white bracket. See how there's two my there on the sides of my, let me see if I can make sure you guys can see that. Okay, yeah. There's two channels there on either side of that bracket that's attached to the bumper. Those channels are going to go over top of that white bracket that we put in place, and that holds the end of the bumper inwards, I guess you would say, like in this way, so it's tucked in and even with the fender. So you make sure that your bumper slots over that bracket when you're going back together, and push your bumper back, and then that will put your bumper to where everything's lined up. And then if you have any issues where you have too much of a gap here or too little of a gap and things are rubbing, you can go in through here. You probably, in your situation, you're not going to have these trim pieces out, but you can pop these trim pieces out if you want to make your life easier. But you're going to go through here, and right there is actually the 10mm bolt that holds that bracket in place. Is you can loosen that 10mm bolt up and move this corner, this bumper up and around and wherever you need to in order to get it to where it's even with the fender. And then you can tighten that bolt back down so that your new bumper is lined up good with your fender. Other than that, you come up through these holes up here underneath here, put your bolts, your through bolts through that go through the bumper into the top half of it, back in place on both sides. Make sure that your trim pieces underneath here for your skid plate and stuff like that are tucked up underneath the bumper and they're not fighting you. Tuck your wheel well liners in. Then at that point your bumper is attached, and then all it is popping these trim pieces back in. These trim pieces along here on the front of the bumper pop in the same way that they came out. They just snap into these little slots here and lock into place. So I'm going to get the bumper bolted up on both sides, get all the trim pieces put on, and I'm going to show you guys the finished product, and then we're going to be done with this job. All right, so fast forward to a couple days later. I've got the bumper on, I've driven the car a little bit. I just wanted to show you guys what it looked like in the daylight. It was a little bit difficult to get a full, you know, front view like this from inside the garage. I have noticed that now that I've got it out and in the daylight that I have a little bit of a gap between the headlight trim and the bumper here. I think that's just a difference in bumper design, that the other bumper was closer to those pieces of trim. I might try adjusting that up a little bit. The way that I think I'm going to be able to adjust it is the standoffs that metal bumper that we took off goes onto have 3 nuts that hold them in place. There's studs that come out of the crash rail behind it, and you can loosen those nuts up and move those brackets up and down and left to right. So I'm going to try to loosen those up and adjust them up a little bit to see if I can get that gap closed up a little bit. That's the only adjustment I can see in any of this stuff. So I'm going to try that and see if it works. If you guys have any questions about whether or not that worked, hit up the comments down below and I'll let you know. Other than that, I'm happy with how it looks. I believe this is an aftermarket replacement or reproduction bumper, so it's a little wonky here and there. It's not perfect. This isn't a show car. I don't know if you if you guys have a show car and you're particular about how things look, I would probably go with a factory bumper that's been on, you know, from the factory, or go to the dealership and order a factory bumper. The factory productions normally are just a little off here and there. But other than that, I'm happy with how it looks. I don't have any complaints. It's what I wanted. If you guys have any questions about this, putting this bumper on, like I said, please comment down below. I'll be sure to answer any questions you guys have. I would appreciate if you guys subscribe to the channel. I also want to let you know that I have a Patreon set up. There'll be a link for that in the description of this video, as well as at the top of my page. I would appreciate if you guys could go over there and be members. Anything you do on that side of things helps me out greatly with making content and doing stuff to cars to get stuff out there. So I would really appreciate if you could do that. Other than that, I don't got anything else to do. I'll see you guys later.